I'm Beatrice. Sitting here in my corner office, looking out at the city skyline, I can't help but reflect on how far I've come. It all came to a head during that fateful shareholders meeting. The conference room was filled with board members, and my family, my father, my brother Leo, and my sister Vivian were presenting their grand plans. Leo, full of confidence in his expensive suit, was proposing a $200 million high-risk investment fund. He clicked through slides, talking about market trends and potential opportunities, claiming the projected returns were exceptional. Vivian followed, outlining the operational structure for the new fund. It all sounded so professional, but they didn't know the truth. I'd been the IT administrator for our family's investment firm, Sterling Financial Group, for years. My corner was the basement server room, where the cooling fans hummed and the lights blinked. I spent my days making sure their computers worked, while they spent theirs in glass-walled conference rooms, making decisions that appeared in financial journals. My family background is a complex web. My grandfather, Henry Sterling, was a shrewd and visionary man. He built Sterling Financial Group from the ground up, turning it into a respected firm in the industry. But he was also controlling. He believed his children, my father included, were not capable of handling real wealth. So, when he passed away 6 years ago, he left the company structure to my father and my aunt, who retired to Bali and never looked back. They got the business, the brand, the client relationships, and the office building. But the actual investment portfolio, worth $500 million, he left to me. I found out about this on my 25th birthday, 3 years after his death. His attorney delivered a letter that changed everything. It said I was the legal owner of the Sterling portfolio. My father had spent the last 3 years believing he controlled these assets, but he never did. The company managed the portfolio on my behalf, but I was the sole owner. I had the choice to keep it private or reveal it, and I decided to wait for the right moment. For 3 years, I kept the secret. I watched my family run the firm, believing they owned what they managed. I fixed their computers, maintained the systems, and stayed invisible in the server room. Meanwhile, I quietly learned everything there was to know about the portfolio I actually owned. As the IT administrator, I had access to every email, every document, and every financial projection. I knew about Leo's risky investments in the blockchain sector that he'd hidden from the board. I knew about Vivian's plans to expand into markets she didn't fully understand. I knew about my father's desperate attempts to match my grandfather's returns, which were slowly eroding the portfolio's stability. On the day of the shareholders' meeting, I arrived at 6 a.m. to run final system checks. Everything had to be perfect. When Leo walked in at 7:30, he asked what I was doing. I told him I was making sure his presentation didn't crash. Then he asked me to look at his financial modeling software, which was giving him error messages. It was obvious he'd corrupted a spreadsheet by forcing a formula the software couldn't handle. He wanted me to make the errors go away, saying he was presenting a vision and that I wouldn't understand. I fixed the error messages without arguing. By 2 p.m. The conference room was full. My father sat at the head of the table, Leo to his right, Vivian to his left, and I was in the back corner, ready to fix any technical issues. The meeting started with my father's overview of the company's performance. Then Leo stood up for his presentation. Just before the vote, Richard Lee, an external board member, asked about the risk profile. I spoke up from my corner, saying the diversification strategy was insufficient. I pointed out that the model didn't account for the correlation between the blockchain markets and the tech sector, and that potential losses could be 40 to 60%, not the 15% maximum they'd projected. Leo's face turned red, and he told me it was a board meeting, not a tech support session. I explained that I understood the financial strategy well. I revealed that I had a master's degree in financial engineering from Stanford, which I completed while working here, taking night classes for 4 years. Everyone was shocked. Then, a man in his 60s, Mr. Thompson, a senior partner at Thompson and Associates, the law firm that represented my grandfather, walked in. He said the board was about to vote on a transfer of assets that required authorization from the portfolio's legal owner. He presented a copy of Henry Sterling's Asset Allocation Trust, which showed that I was the legal owner of the entire investment portfolio. The room exploded. Leo was shouting that it was impossible, and Vivian went pale. My father stared at the document in disbelief. They accused me of lying and spying, but I explained that I'd just never corrected their assumptions. I pointed out that they'd underperformed the market average by 3.1% per year, resulting in approximately $47 million in lost potential returns over 6 years. I rejected Leo's proposal, saying it was based on flawed projections and insufficient risk analysis. Mr. Thompson confirmed that major restructuring required my approval, and I was declining it. After the initial shock, Maria Lopez, another board member, asked about my intentions. I said I planned to make significant changes, starting with a complete audit of all investment decisions made in the last 6 years. I'd already hired an external firm. Leo was furious, but I was firm. The next morning, I found a note on the server room door asking me to come to the executive floor. There, Jennifer from HR told me they'd prepared an office for me. She also informed me that Leo and Vivian had submitted their resignations. I met with my father in his office. He said he'd spent 30 years building the company, but it turned out the assets were never his. I told him he'd built the company structure, client relationships, and reputation, which had value. I wanted him to continue managing client relationships and maintaining the company's reputation, but I was bringing in new people for portfolio management. He understood that my grandfather had been right about him. He was a good manager but a poor owner. He agreed to stay, and we discussed how the new structure would work. The audit took 4 months. During that time, I hired 6 new analysts, 2 portfolio managers, and a chief risk officer. I moved permanently into the corner office but still spent time in the server room, as the new IT director needed training. Leo never came back. I heard he'd taken a position at a competing firm, where his innovation fund proposal was also rejected. Vivian returned after 2 months, apologized, and I put her in charge of client relations. The audit results confirmed my suspicions. We fixed the issues, and within 6 months, the portfolio was restructured, properly diversified, and generating returns that exceeded market benchmarks for the first time in years. Within a year, the $500 million portfolio had grown to $547 million. 1 year after the shareholders' meeting, my father came to my office. He said the board was impressed with the portfolio's performance and was proposing to expand my authority to include oversight of the company's operational investments. He also apologized for underestimating me. As I sit here now, looking at the quarterly reports, I know that everything has changed. I've gone from being the invisible IT person to the person in charge of the assets. I've learned that true power comes from understanding how systems work, and I'm ready to continue leading Sterling Financial Group to greater success.